And will seal India's berth in the semi-finals of the ICC Champions Trophy 2017. Chris Harris, do you get a feeling that, like the World Cup in 2015, India are a team which knows how to ride momentum very well, and they won't be too bothered looking at this Lankan team, especially how they've been playing in the last 24 months?
I think if you look at this Indian team, I mean, you've got to look at the four players that aren't playing to see how strong they are. So you've got Ashwin, Karthik, Rahana and Shami who aren't playing. And I think everyone watching would say, you play any of those players and they'll be happy. So they're playing, I think, their best cricket, their most consistent cricket. They've got all bases covered, spin, seam, the seamers are bowling brilliantly. That one person that they were worried about, Panda's done a great job with the bat, 20 off 6. And then bowled and got a couple of wickets, and he's a great fielder. So I think India have got all bases covered. And on the other hand, you've got Sri Lanka who have got real issues. Obviously, their one form player, Taranga's out because of a slow over rate. The good news is Angelo Matthews is back, but the other bad news, I guess, is there's some inexperience. They're just trying to find their way back and trying to get to the form that they used to have.
But is that because, Chris, if I could interrupt you, is that because Sri Lanka over the years have, like New Zealand, always been very consistent because they had a settled combination? We saw with the game against Pakistan as well that Pakistan didn't have a settled lineup, they didn't have the depth. India have the depth, South Africa have the depth, England have the depth, and that is what makes you stand out, especially in a tournament like this where you don't have enough chances of turning it around if you lose an opening game.
Oh, exactly. And you've got to look in recent times. Sri Lanka have lost Jayawardene, Sangakkara, and also Dushan, three world-class players in their own right, and they haven't been able to replace those players. So perhaps you'd argue that, you know, a year, 18 months ago, they needed to blood some new players through so that come to these tournaments, they've got that line settled, so they haven't. And then also the big one for me is Malinga as well. You know, he hasn't played, it was first one-day international for 2 years. Yeah. And for me, he's just a little bit off the beat. He's not bowling quite as quick as he used to, and he's not the force that he used to.
But isn't that the problem, Chris, that Sri Lanka have the flair players? They've always had flair players, but you need someone to bat through those 50 overs, and they don't seem to have someone who will stand up and say, I'll bat those 50 overs. We saw them getting hammered by South Africa before the ICC Champions Trophy as well. Yeah,
well, the difference between like an Indian and a Sri Lanka, India have got so many players that can come and be destructive and bat through an innings. Sri Lanka haven't got too many. So they desperately need that person to bat through an innings and everyone to build off that. And that's the problem they have, because they don't have that too many destructive players that can score a 50 off 30 balls. Angelo Matthews is perhaps one that can. So you're right, at the top of the order, they have to have someone that's got to go through, score 120, and then everyone else bats around them.
I found an intriguing contest within a contest, looking at some numbers, some statistics. Now, England have a different way of approaching the start to an ODI innings. India have a very different way. Since the 2015 World Cup, the Indian openers average just about 4.8 in the first 10 overs. England and Australia go around about 58, 59. But the Indian team has the belief that once you get that good start, we have the players who can come and destroy attacks, especially now that you've seen the way Yuvraj Singh is. It's a brave man who punted on his recall to Indian cricket perhaps sometime against England in January, but he's returned the favour, and he looks like the man who can be the game changer. He's always been a game changer. He's back at his best.
Yeah, well, that's just the different game plans. For me, India, if I'm a side playing against India, if I think we've got to, or how are we going to beat them, we've got to get early wickets. So hence the reason I think they're prepared to give up a little bit of a run rate in that first 10 to keep those wickets intact, because they've got so many class players. As you said, Kohli's back in form. You know, we talked about Yuvraj playing, and I'm sure all of India are very happy that he did, because he played a magnificent innings, got man of the match. So yeah, I think if India don't lose early wickets, you know, you're looking at some big total, and it's going to be well over 300.
And once India gets 300, then you're putting the pressure on the opposition, knowing that Sri Lanka don't have that kind of batting to pull them through. What does it also tell you about the belief in the Indian team that Hardik Pandya comes out ahead of Mahendra Singh Dhoni, who's regarded as one of the best finishers in the world game even now?
Yeah, well, I think he just came out and he played a magnificent innings, didn't he? So I think, you know, Dhoni will probably be disappointed that he came out in front of him, but I think after that performance, 20 off 6 balls, he'll say, well, I don't think I could have done much better than that. But yeah, India are a great side at the moment.
Important call to make this for the team management. You know, Ravi Ashwin, ICC Test Cricket of the Year, what do you do with him? He could be useful against the Lankans who have left-handers, but that means benching a batsman. Would you take that risk, or in a tournament like this, stick to a winning combination?
Personally, I think you stick to a winning combination. I think India have been very, very consistent, and in the recent sort of 18 months to 2 years, they've played brilliant cricket. And I would stick with the winning combination. There's always, Ashwin's one of those players that he could sit on the bench for 3 or 4 games and then come in and still do bowl very, very well. So I would, if it was me, I'd stick with the same side.
Okay, Chris Harris says he will stick with the same side. We'll have to wait till 2:30 p.m. on Thursday to see if Virat Kohli has gambled with his lineup or he has gone ahead and picked the same